What if the reason you're struggling to get truly great results out of artificial intelligence isn't because you haven't, memorized the right prompt frameworks?
Right, like it's not just about the prompt.
Exactly. What if the AI is simply and quietly exposing this really harsh reality that you never actually learned how to plan your work in the first place?
Oof. Yeah, that is a slightly uncomfortable thought, isn't it?
It really is. Like, the tool isn't fixing your bad habits, it's just scaling them up.
Which means, we're looking at a fundamental misunderstanding of what these tools actually do. We tend to treat an LLM like a magic wand.
Right, like a shortcut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We think it bypasses the need for structural thinking. But in reality, the underlying technology demands a higher level of rigorous thought than, well, anything we've used before.
Well, welcome into the deep dive. That exact tension is our mission today. We are decoding how to truly master AI tools.
Specifically, agentic coding models, right?
Yes, exactly. Rather than just using them to generate mistakes at the speed of light, we want to figure out how to get better, not just faster.
Yeah. And our source material for this is just brilliant.
It really is. It's an excerpt from a blog post titled "The Secret Life of Claude Code Using AI with Discipline."
And that was published over on tech-reader.blog by Aaron Rose. He's a software engineer and a technology writer.
Right. And the format he uses...
Oh, the format is what caught my eye immediately. He doesn't give us like a bulleted list of the top 10 coding prompts.
Hey, goodness!
Right. Instead, he writes this narrative vignette. We're essentially eavesdropping on a conversation between two developers.
Margaret, who is the senior engineer, and her junior colleague, Timothy.
Yeah, and the setting of their conversation is this grand Victorian library in London.
Which feels incredibly deliberate, right? Like, the setting practically breeds quiet, deliberate craftsmanship.
It totally does. It's the antithesis of that frantic copy-paste from Stack Overflow energy that dominates a lot of modern software development.
Exactly. The library kind of represents code quality as this unspoken objective.
Right.
So we're going to extract the core insights from Timothy and Margaret's dialogue. We really want to understand how applying discipline to AI transforms your relationship with your work.
And that applies whether you write code or draft legal briefs or, architect marketing campaigns.
Spot on. Okay, let's unpack this. We start with Timothy having a rather painful moment of self-reflection.
Yeah, he's looking back at his first year using AI tools, and he comes to a pretty stark realization.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, he realizes that his early failures with the AI, the hallucinated functions, the outputs that completely missed the mark.
The hours wasted correcting those minor errors.
Exactly. All of that was a direct result of his own lack of discipline. He was just expecting the tool to read his mind.
Which, spoiler alert, it cannot do.
No, it cannot.
Yeah.
He confesses to Margaret that he was providing, zero context, no constraints, no historical background on the project.
And he frames this with a fantastic quote. He says, I was placing orders, not briefing a colleague.
I love that line. Placing orders.
Right, because if we think about how most of us start using AI, it's very transactional, like a fast food drive-through.
Yeah, you pull up, shout a quick demand into the speaker, and expect a perfectly cooked meal to just appear.
Exactly. You treat the prompt box like a search engine. You drop in a snippet of code and say, refactor this.
But doing that completely ignores the mechanical reality of how a large language model actually operates.
It's like giving a navigator a map without telling them your destination.
Or what kind of vehicle you're driving.
Yes. Or whether you want the scenic route or the highway. It's just wild.
What's fascinating here is the technical breakdown of why placing orders fails so spectacularly when you're doing complex work.
Right, because of the context window.
Exactly. An LLM operates within a context window. It has absolutely no persistent state memory of your unwritten business goals.
It doesn't know what's in your head.
Right. It doesn't know that your company prioritizes, say, low latency over readable code.
Yeah.
Or that you have this old legacy database schema that absolutely cannot be altered.
Right. So if you just say, build a user authentication endpoint, the model just optimizes for the statistical likelihood of what a generic auth endpoint looks like.
Across its entire training data, yeah.
So it builds an endpoint. It doesn't build your endpoint.
Precisely. It's just guessing based on averages.
Oh.
But briefing a colleague, that means you ground the intelligence in your specific architectural reality.
You're treating the AI like a talented sous chef.
Yes, exactly. You don't just tell a sous chef, make dinner. You explain the menu, the ingredients you have on hand, the vibe of the restaurant.
Right, you're explicitly defining the constraints. Like, we're using Node.js, we need JWT authentication, it must interface with our existing error-handling middleware.
Located in this specific directory, and we cannot introduce any new dependencies.
Wow, yeah. You are creating a sandbox for the AI to operate within.
Which means the actual skill we're talking about here isn't prompting.
No, the skill is systems thinking.
Exactly. You have to understand the boundaries of your own project well enough to articulate them to an outsider.
And once Timothy makes that conscious shift, once he stops placing orders at the drive-thru and starts meticulously briefing Claude code, something fascinating happens.
Yeah, his daily workflow completely changes. The discipline begins to compound.
Because at first, it's hard, right?
Absolutely. Timothy notes that originally, forcing himself to write out these detailed briefs, outlining the context, planning the logic before letting the AI write a single line of code, it felt really rigid.
It's a heavy cognitive lift.
Very heavy. He was consciously forcing a technique. It didn't feel natural at all.
But over time, that rigid technique melts into an unconscious habit.
Just like any real skill.
Right. He reaches a point where he doesn't need a checklist to remember to provide context. In fact, he tells Margaret that he only notices the discipline now when he fails to do it.
Because the absence feels wrong. That's a direct quote. The absence feels wrong.
That is such a profound shift.
It really is. That transition from conscious technique to unconscious habit is literally the physiological definition of skill acquisition.
Like learning to drive.
Or learning to play the piano. When you're a novice, your working memory is entirely consumed by the mechanics. You're staring at your fingers, calculating the distance between the keys.
Sweating over every single movement.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But once the finger placement becomes automatic, your cognitive load just drops. Your attention is suddenly freed up.
You stop thinking about the keys and you start thinking about the phrasing, the emotion, the music.
Yes. And Margaret has this brilliant way of framing this exact phenomenon in the context of their work as developers.
How so?
Well, because Timothy has internalized the basics of briefing the AI, his attention is liberated. He can perceive structural elements of the software architecture that a beginner cannot even see.
Because the beginner's brain is just maxed out trying to get a Python script to execute without a syntax error.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
literally don't have the bandwidth to see the bigger picture.
But Timothy actually pushes back a bit in the story, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He tells Margaret, it doesn't feel like mastery. He feels like he's just scratching the surface.
I love Margaret's response to this. Could you highlight how she defines mastery here?
Gladly. She redefines master entirely. She says mastery shouldn't feel like you know everything.
Right?
It feels like, and I quote, increasing clarity about how much remains to learn.
Oh, wow. It's like the horizon pulling further away the closer you get to it.
Because your vision is getting sharper. The sharper your vision, the more you realize the sheer complexity of the ecosystem you are building.
Okay, so if conscious technique becomes unconscious habit,
Right.
and your attention is suddenly freed up because the AI is handling the boilerplate execution,
Right.
what do you actually do with that extra brain space and time? Because the source notes that Timothy's work has gotten dramatically faster.
Oh, way faster. A task that used to take a full day now takes a morning. What took a morning takes an hour.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second here. In a standard corporate environment, isn't speed the entire point? Like, my boss wants my sprint tickets closed.
Sure, they want productivity.
Right. So if Claude Code finishes my ticket by 11:00 a.m., why wouldn't I just ship the code, log off early, and take a long lunch? Why is Timothy treating this speed as a stepping stone rather than the finish line?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of software engineering, or really any high-stakes knowledge, work speed without judgment is just a faster way to create a disaster.
A faster way to fail.
Exactly. Because if you blindly ship the code the AI generated by 11:00 a.m. just because it compiles, you are almost certainly introducing technical debt.
Like using outdated libraries.
Yeah. The AI might have used a deprecated library or solved a local problem in a way that creates a massive bottleneck for the broader system.
And undoing that AI-generated spaghetti code when the system crashes next month will take weeks.
Way more time than you saved by logging off early.
So the corporate desire for pure speed is actually a trap.
A massive one. The mechanical act of typing code or, formatting a spreadsheet or drafting the boilerplate of a contract.
those tasks were never where the real value of a knowledge worker lay anyway.
Exactly. They were just where the time was historically spent. You had to do them to get to the real work.
Right.
So Timothy is taking that reclaimed time and moving what Margaret calls upstream.
Upstream meaning the strategic layer.
Precisely. He is spending his newly freed up attention on judgment. He's evaluating the architecture. He's refining the design patterns.
He's actually thinking.
Yes. And most importantly, he's taking the time to interrogate whether they are building the right thing in the first place.
Rather than just building the wrong thing faster.
Exactly.
Margaret drops a principle here that I think is the golden rule for anyone using AI, regardless of industry. I want you, the listener, to really internalize this.
It's a great quote.
She says, the tool returns time. Discipline determines whether that time is invested or merely spent. Using AI without discipline makes you faster. Using it with discipline makes you better.
Faster versus better. That's the core distinction.
It's so true. Because if you use the time saved to take a long lunch, you just spent the time.
You're exactly the same caliber of professional you were yesterday, just with more free time.
But if you reinvest that time into upstream architectural thinking, you are actively upgrading your own capabilities.
And this shift from executing mechanical tasks to making high-level judgments triggers a radical acceleration in a professional's career.
It leads directly to what Margaret calls the development of taste.
Yes, taste.
Timothy asks what the next phase of his career looks like, right? Assuming he maintains this discipline.
And Margaret predicts fluency.
Fluency.
She describes it as the ability to have the entire massive project and the microscopic individual components in your head simultaneously.
It's moving beyond technique and into practice.
Because technique has a visible ceiling, but practice does not.
So what exactly is taste in this context? Can you break that down?
Yeah, to understand taste, we really have to separate it from pure technical competence. In any highly skilled profession, there is a massive gulf between an output that is technically correct and an output that is fundamentally right.
Okay, let me try to break that down for our listener. So correct means the code compiles.
It passes the automated unit tests.
Right. It successfully queries the database and returns the data. It does the job it was asked to do.
That's correct.
But right means it does all of that while perfectly matching the invisible architecture of the existing system.
Yes. It uses the established naming conventions. It anticipates future scaling issues.
It doesn't hack together a new solution when a perfectly good internal utility already exists.
Exactly. Correct is just a machine evaluation.
Right.
Requires a human understanding of the broader context.
That is such a vital distinction.
That is the essence of taste. It is the intuitive recognition of elegance and sustainability in your work.
And it's not something you can just look up.
No, the crucial thing about taste is that it cannot be taught in a boot camp or read in a textbook. It is earned entirely through the accumulated friction of making thousands of decisions, seeing the outcomes, and refining your internal model.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This brings us to what might be the single most underappreciated consequence of generative AI.
The time machine effect.
Yes, because a tool like Claude Code can produce so much output so incredibly quickly, it functions as a literal time machine for professional experience.
Think about the mechanics of training a neural network. You have generative models that create data, and you have discriminator models that evaluate it.
Right.
When you use AI upstream, you become the discriminator. In the past, a junior developer might write a complex feature from scratch. It takes them 2 weeks.
So they only see one approach to the problem in 2 weeks.
Right. Their internal model of what makes good code updates very slowly.
But with an agentic AI, that same developer can ask the tool to generate 5 different architectural approaches to the same problem in 10 minutes.
And then the developer has to sit there and evaluate those 5 approaches. They have to critically examine the trade-offs of each one.
They are getting the reps in.
Exactly. The sheer volume of architectural decisions they are forced to make artificially increases their rate of learning.
They are constantly exercising that judgment muscle.
Deciding what is merely correct versus what is actually right for the system.
Margaret explicitly calls out this timeline compression. She points out that 5 years of building things by hand, learning through slow manual trial and error.
That can be compressed into 2 years of focused AI collaboration.
Because you are absorbing the lessons of countless iterations. The cost of generating those iterations has dropped to 0.
But, and this is a catastrophic but, for a lot of people, this compression only happens if you're paying active attention.
If you're actually doing the evaluating.
Exactly. Which brings us to the individuals who are failing in this new paradigm.
Right. Timothy mentions a few developers he knows who are deeply frustrated with AI.
Yeah, their outputs are messy, their code bases are degrading, and they're constantly fighting the tool.
And he realizes their shared flaw. They're using AI as a shortcut to bypass thinking entirely.
They view the prompt box as a vending machine. Put in a minimum effort request, get a finished product.
And the technology actively and aggressively punishes that approach.
It does. The LLM is a reflection of the input. If you provide a garbage, thoughtless set of instructions, devoid of context or constraints,
The AI will confidently synthesize a garbage, thoughtless output.
you cannot outsource the cognitive heavy lifting. The quality of your thinking creates the ceiling for the quality of the AI's output.
So if we summarize Margaret's core thesis here, it completely flips the narrative on who actually succeeds with AI.
Yeah, the professionals who are thriving right now didn't discover some secret repository of magic prompts.
No, they are thriving because they brought rigorous discipline with them to the tool.
They were already meticulous about defining their context. They were already mapping out their logic before executing.
They were already brutally reviewing their own work.
Right, and for that specific group of people, an advanced tool like Claude Code is not a shortcut. It is an amplifier.
A scamplifier.
It takes the deep structural thinking they were already doing and scales it across mass amounts of output.
The discipline is the foundation.
And the AI is simply the multiplier applied to that foundation.
That is such a vital takeaway for you listening right now, no matter what field you are in. Writing clear briefs, planning your strategic goals, understanding your historical constraints.
Reviewing drafts with a critical eye.
Yes, none of these are AI skills. They aren't new techniques invented for the 2020s.
Right, they are timeless, fundamentally sound professional practices that predate silicon chips by centuries.
The technology hasn't rewritten the rules of what constitutes good work. It has just acted as a massive magnifying glass.
It makes the absence of discipline painfully, disastrously visible.
And it makes the presence of discipline incredibly, almost supernaturally powerful.
That's beautifully put.
Before we wrap up, there is one final, almost meta layer to this narrative that Aaron Rose includes, and it's just brilliant.
Oh, the conversation itself.
Yes. Toward the end of the source, Timothy has this quiet realization about the physical conversation he is having with Margaret in that Victorian library.
Right. He realizes that having these deep, ongoing dialogues about the nature of his work is in itself a core discipline.
He notes that he came to understand the flaws in his own process simply through the act of explaining them carefully to a senior colleague.
It echoes that old engineering concept of rubber duck debugging.
Oh, right. The idea that explaining your code out loud to an inanimate object helps you spot the errors.
Yeah, but this elevates it to the strategic level. By verbalizing his friction points, his failures, and his changing habits, Timothy was actively forcing his brain to structure his own understanding.
The conversation was solidifying the practice.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for your day-to-day? I want to issue a challenge to you listening right now. Find your own Margaret.
That's great advice.
Find someone you respect in your field. Someone who values craftsmanship over pure speed. Pull them aside and actively dissect your workflow.
Discuss where you're using tools as a crutch and where you're using them as an amplifier.
Because the simple act of describing how you work will inevitably elevate the quality of your work.
And as you return to your own tools, whether you are compiling code, analyzing financial models, or outlining a novel, remember where the cognitive burden lies.
Always.
Bring the thinking to the tool. Do not expect the tool to generate the thinking for you. Cultivate the discipline in your own mind first, and then let the technology amplify your reach.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that isn't explicitly answered in the text, but builds directly on this idea of developing taste.
Okay.
We talked about how AI acts as a time machine for experience by giving us a massive volume of messy, imperfect outputs to evaluate.
Right. By constantly correcting the AI, we learn the difference between what is technically correct and what is architecturally right.
But what happens in 3 or 5 or 10 years when the agentic models get so good and so perfect that they stop giving us bad options to evaluate?
Oh, wow. Because if the discriminator never sees a bad output, the internal model stops updating.
Exactly. If the tool is flawless from the jump, will the next generation of workers ever be able to develop taste at all?
The muscle just atrophies.
Or they're trapped by the very perfection of their tools, fundamentally unable to recognize true craftsmanship because they've never had to fix what's broken.
That is a terrifying, fascinating thought.
It's something to think about the next time you blindly accept an AI's first draft. Your judgment is a muscle. If you outsource the lifting, it will atrophy. Keep bringing discipline to your craft. Keep wrestling with the work, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.